Alrighty, welcome to this episode of Lectures with Liddington. So we just finished up talking about bioenergetics and the different ways that cells utilize energy in some fashion. Where we're going from here, we're going to talk about cell division, literally taking cells and dividing them out into other new cells. So why would a cell need to do that? And there are a couple of different reasons why cells might need to divide. It can include things such as reproduction, right? If you are a living organism, you want to continue to be a living organism, and you want to pass genetic information down to future generations. So in order to do that, you are going to need to make new cells. Different ways it can be done to do that, but to reproduce, you're going to need to make new cells. Growth and development are another area of where you might need new cells. Growing, so you are not the same size you were when you were born, thank goodness for mom. And you are also growing while you were in the womb, right? From a fetus to just before you're born, there's that development going on. There's lots of cell division going on in that fetus. So that's another area where you're going to see it. But also sometimes in a less related to making a new organism, more for maintaining a whole organism. So things like repairing and replacing damaged or old dead cells or unusable tissues, you're going to need to undergo cell division there as well. Now, cell division is going to look different for different organisms. So when you're talking about a prokaryote, for example, really the only reason that they need to divide is survival. Reproduction is truly the only reason that a prokaryote is going to need to undergo cell division, is to make another copy of itself. So this occurs through a process, we call this asexual reproduction, and what this means is that there's only one parent cell. So it's literally making a photocopy. So right over here, this is a bacterial cell, and it's undergoing what we call binary fission. Bi meaning two, fission meaning break apart. So it's literally doubles its DNA and then will pinch off right here. So this will end up being one bacterium, and then this will be another one, and they are going to be exact copies of each other. That tends to be one of the negatives here. With asexual reproduction, you get exact copies. So instead of having genetic variation, you're literally just making a bunch of photocopies. Now, in eukaryotes, they still do need cell division for reproduction. It's going to look a little different. We'll talk about that in a second. But because you are a much larger organism and potentially multicellular, the more cells you have, the more reasons you may need to divide and make new ones. So all of those reasons apply here for eukaryotes. It could be for growth, development. It could be to repair or replace damaged or old tissue, old cells that you don't need anymore. Every cell has a lifeline, how long it's going to last. And when it dies, you need to replace it with another functional cell. So I mentioned reproduction in eukaryotes is going to look a little bit different than it does in prokaryotes. The thing here is in eukaryotes, you have more variety in how this happens. So you can have asexual reproduction. It is possible in eukaryotes to have asexual reproduction where there's only one parent cell. Their examples include things like budding, fragmentation, regeneration, They're all different ways that a eukaryotic cell can make a copy of itself. It's going to look a little bit different than it does in a prokaryote, where it's just binary fission. It's literally copy, whoop, paste, pull apart into two. Budding is used in what are called hydra, is very common, some sort of lower organisms. Spores are another example of an asexual reproduction process. So things like mold and mushrooms, right? They produce spores, and spores are an asexual reproduction process. In order to undergo asexual reproduction, you're going to have to do a process called mitosis. And this is where you are making an exact copy of a cell. Now, sexual reproduction, this is where we have two parent cells that come together. So the problem here, when you have to bring two things together, you're going to have to add that genetic information together. So before I can do that, I've got to create cells, which we end up calling gametes. This is kind of alluding to where we're going. But you have to create a cell that has half as much genetic information. So how we do that is through a process called meiosis. So where we're going from here is we're going to look more deeply into the life cycle of a cell. It's called the cell cycle. And then specifically into these divisions. What is mitosis? What does it look like? And then what is meiosis? And what is meiosis for? What's the purpose? How do those two things compare to each other? And why would you use one versus the other? So let's pause right there and do a little practice.